Well, now today being the 21st day of July 2021 also means that we are far from where we did start this year, and not where we thought we wouldn't actually come this far. But nevertheless, we want to give glory and honor to God who has brought us this far. Nevertheless, we want to say good morning to you and thank you so much for starting your day with us here on UBC. My name is Felix Nkunda and I am with my colleagues Priscilla and Robert. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning to you, Felix.
How are you?
I'm very fine.
Great.
I'm very
good morning,
fine.
Priscilla.
Good morning to you, Felix Nkunda, and good morning to you, all of Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday, the 21st day of July 2021, but also the countdown now gives us exactly 10 days to the end of lockdown.
Well, of course, speaking about the end of lockdown, there's so much that has happened in lockdown. We can only have a few activities happening in lockdown, though there's so much that is happening. I have also noticed that there's a lot of online transaction going on in terms of the entertainment space, and so much creations that have also emerged within this time. Maybe just to ask, start with you, Robert, is there anything particular that you have taken notice of during this lockdown that has caught your eye?
Well, first you've talked about online business. This is one of the things that I've seen really that people have embraced. For example, now people's shops are online. A person just gets the stock, then distributes it in various social media platforms, and they get market for that. But I've also come to notice one thing that actually, in my opinion, is very, very interesting, that actually people have learned to reduce on their expenditure. Previously, there are things we thought that maybe a wedding had to be that very lavish and that very, but in the lockdown, with the guidelines given, at one point I thought maybe Ugandans would just say no, we can no longer carry out weddings because this is not the way we do our things. So when the situation normalizes, but I've seen Ugandans coming up to have that moderate, that
so
small,
what
that
actually
reasonable.
caught your eye?
So basically that is one of the things that I've come to see that
You
yes.
find unique in terms of the lockdown. Yes, Priscilla.
Okay, well, for me, I will pick particular stories. First of all, there's a team of teachers in Hoima, of course, having lost lockdown causes them not to have work anymore. Even when lockdown is uplifted, they don't know what next, what's the procedure, because the president's directive was that every teacher must be immunized if they're going to go back into the education system. And then the education system alone is seemingly also going to be having a lot of overflow in terms of children vis-a-vis the SOPs. So what these teachers decided to do, they came together and they decided to actually start bricklaying. And it's a hard one for them. Of course, they were thinking the community is seeing them, the students are seeing them, but then they've put their pride aside to be able to actually fend for their families, which is phenomenal. But also the other thing that I've come to see Ugandans appreciate is agriculture. Now more than ever, everyone either in their backyard somewhere, they have invested in agriculture in one way or another to be able to survive through this place.
Wow, there's so much indeed that is happening, but as I've always said, make the best use of times like this, because probably you may never have, I don't know if in your life you've ever had quite a time like you've had in lockdown, to reappreciate what you do or what you can do or what you actually didn't do. But anyway, and Robert, there's something you said a couple of days ago about your area of stay. We talked about the issue of the COVID relief money. Has anyone you know received this money?
Yesterday I had some smiles actually when I moved around. I remembered the words of one of my great mentor, that was the late Ballet Francis. He always said that if you've not researched, then you have no right to speak. So yesterday I knew this relief thing is going to dominate a bit of this week. So I tried to move around and I discovered a number of people in my area actually had gotten the money. But where all didn't go well with me is that these, I didn't consider them to be among the most vulnerable. I'll give an example. My immediate neighbor happens to have a retail shop. So it was around 2:30 and I was with him and told me, just first come so close. And I'm like, what? But I'm like, this person has a shop. When these lists came, you know, there's what they call the community development officer. So these people were at the forefront of coming up with these lists. And what the LCs had to do was to peruse through at least that the community development officer has come with. This is a person who may not necessarily even be within your area because they're working with the division. So the LCs try to remove some people, say this doesn't come, so the list should be forwarded. But unfortunately, I came to understand that I think the impact of the LC's local council one was not something they took really for as the main reason, because looking at the people who received in my area, I must be honest, the selection that we had, I was discussing with my committee, we would find that the people you've done surveillance with to find out how many of the vulnerable you put actually have missed, and how people who got and you read.
Priscilla, do you know anyone who got this money?
No, I actually have, unfortunately, I've not met anyone who has been, you know, part of the recipients for the Nabanja money.
Okay. Now, lastly, before we get into our local stories, as today morning, as I was coming here, I kept on thinking to myself, there are a lot of things that we learn, yet no one actually has ever taught us some of these things. And we get to do them perfectly. And maybe that's what I want to ask you today morning as we do start our day, for someone out there to also share in that kind of experience. Anything that you can allude to that you didn't have to learn from anyone, yet you are perfect at it? Priscilla?
Oh yeah, it would, you can't say that you didn't have to learn from anyone, because you come into this world knowing nothing, but wherever it is that you're placed, you tap into by what you see, and then you pick it on, then you start doing. So there's no one who actually just starts doing without having had any form of informal learning towards it. So not that they have to go to class, but they can watch you do it, and then they also start doing it. And for me, that would be cooking. Yeah.
Robert?
Really, like Priscilla said, I think most of the things you either copy from someone, but like Felix said, when you're not taught. For example, I don't remember anyone teaching me how to ride a bicycle. I just got it because it was there, had a bit of my falling, finally I learned. A car, I just sat, was watching people doing it. These automatics, I went on the road, then later I processed my driving permit. Things like being patient. You know, these are some of the things that you learn over time. No one teaches you that, but you just get to that. Then also, there are some habits that people learn without getting from somebody. So basically, yes, someone may not teach you, but there is at least where you've seen that and you get equipped with that by you trying out on your own, and you personally perfect the art.
Well, of course, now all our viewers, please do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. That is on Facebook, of course, also on Twitter, but follow us or catch us live on YouTube. Now you can be able to even catch the show later on, or you can rewind, pause, forward, and all those things. But as you do that, let us take you through the stories that did happen in the last 24 hours, that is local. But of course, later on also, I will be giving you what's been trending in your international scene.
Well, what dominated most of the headlines is Eid prayers, that is Eid Aduha, and we're taking you to what the situation was like at Old Kampala Mosque. Remember, Eid al-Fitr, there were numbers, but Eid Aduha, people were in the lockdown. And the Mufti of Uganda, His Eminence Sheikh Shaban Ramadan Mubaje, appealed to government to extend more support to the vulnerable majority, saying they did not receive the money that was meant to support them during the 42-day partial lockdown. He was presiding over Eid Aduha prayers at Old Kampala National Mosque. Unlike Eid al-Fitr prayers in May this year, where the National Mosque, that is at the Old Kampala, was partly full with a handful of Muslims allowed to attend prayers, this time around, Eid al-Aduha prayers, the story was very different. At the same mosque, the number was only limited to 15 people in attendance, with media invitations offered to over 40 media houses to relay the live proceedings of the home benches. You could confidently say that the media enjoyed an empty space while doing their work. The continued arrest and incarceration of criminals suspected to be from the Islamic faith topped the day's sermon at the mosque. Eid Aduha prayers at Old Kampala Mosque were presided over by Mufti Shaban Mubaje. Although Uganda Supreme Council acknowledges that government interventions of offering cash to the vulnerable persons affected by the partial lockdown was very timely, however, the Mufti wants government to revise the mode quoting that food would have been a better option. He notes that, if possible, government should shift its energies on aiding the burden of health systems if it can afford to offer cash relief aid to the vulnerable persons across the country. However, the government's move to ban individual food donations to COVID-19 crippled is also a matter that attracted discussion at the mosque.
Celebrations around Kampala's city downtown, it was nearly empty with a handful of locals on the street. Unlike other days when Eid was celebrated by a mouthful of Muslims, the story this time around was different. Though some places in the city suburb were open, the number of people accessing these settings remained low. Some streets were extremely empty, more roads were closed using ropes to deny any access to town. The deployment of police, Uganda People's Defense Force, Local Defense Unit, Special Forces Command have been sighted at various road blocks. And garage operators around Chiseka Market were operating, while other business operators were seated adjacent to their padlocked entries. The street vendors also were supposed to be in plenty, but this time around there were few and none really selling their merchandise.
Still looking at the situation yesterday as the Muslim faithful were celebrating Eid al-Adha, unlike Eid al-Fitr where Muslims attended prayers in mosques, some mosques did not conduct Eid prayers in observance of the standard operating procedures. In the new norm of COVID-19, the country still under lockdown, a big day for Muslims, Eid al-Adha takes a new twist from the previous celebrations where Muslims could gather to have prayers in the name of Allah. Only 2 turned up to conduct prayers at Kibuli, a place where hundreds would congregate. This is not any different from Nakasero Mosque. It is also the same situation at Abdul Masjid Eid. Conducting prayers outside the mosque had moved far away because they could not have the numbers. Even the takbir, that is a praise to Allah, which is a norm during Eid Day, was not conducted. Jingo Badiru, who had also come for prayers, found a similar situation. There was a lady also who came to collect meat at the mosque, which is normally shared on this day, but to find a closed mosque. Now, people are appealing to landlords to help them, ensuring that they are not evicted because of the difficult times. Eid al-Adha is celebrated every month of Dhul Hijjah, that is to commemorate the willingness of Abraham to sacrifice his son Ishmael in obedience to God's command.
The plight of Kasese people does continue, but the Prime Minister of Uganda, Robin Nabanja, rejected an assortment of items donated to flood victims of Kasese district. Nabanja, who described the mosquito nets and blankets as substandard and small, saying Kasese should not be a dumping ground. She was assessing the extent of damage caused by the bursting of the banks of River Nyamwamba, promising to secure land for the affected people. Made up of men, women and children, these victims of floods caused by River Nyamwamba bursting its banks have lived in this internal displaced people's camp for nearly a year. So, as Prime Minister Robin Nabanja embarked on a fact-finding assessment of the situation of Kasese, top on her mind was finding solutions to the Kasese people's predicament. This similar message, emphasizing acquiring of land for relocation of victims, was put forward by Minister for Disaster Preparedness, Engineer Hilary Onek. This assessment follows recent floods that were recently displacing many, calling for relief from responsible agencies and parties.
I saw the Prime Minister at it when she said this aid, this relief must be returned to Kampala until something better is produced. These blankets, I say, look at this, return them. And by tomorrow, new relief aid should be here in Kasese. We will not tolerate substandard work, but also our heavyweight lifter, that is Julius Sechitoreko, was in Japan. He disappeared in Japan. At least he was found, and I think plans are underway to have him brought back home. But these and more, Felix.
Well, of course, crossing over to international stories, now we'll be looking at the first event of troubled Tokyo Olympic gets underway. Now, Japanese pitcher Yukiko Unedo delivered the first ball of the pandemic hit 2020 Tokyo Olympics on Wednesday morning amid continuing doubts about the wisdom of holding the event at a time when the fast-spreading Delta variant is driving a resurgence of COVID-19 in Japan and around the world. The Japan are thinking, or rather taking on Australia in softball, with 2 more softball games as well as women's football matches scheduled for Wednesday. Now, Olympics and Japanese officials have pushed ahead with the Olympics despite a persistent opposition in country for hosting at least more than 11,000 athletes, staff, media that come with them given the rising numbers of COVID-19 cases. Now, Tokyo is currently in a corona state of emergency. Coaches for the 6 countries competing in softball tournament applauded organizers on Tuesday for creating a safe environment and said their players particularly appreciated the Olympics not being cancelled. Now, crossing over to China, where we see thousands evacuated as rail station and roads were submerged by the China floods. Now, the torrential rain has also caused severe flooding in parts of central China, facing people from their homes and leaving stations and roads submerged. More than at least 10,000 people in Henan province have been evacuated to shelters following the record rainfall. At least 12 people have died in the city of Zhengzhou when and since the floodings began. Authorities have come to make confirmation that more than at least dozen cities have been affected, with the main road forced to close and flights cancelled. Now, Henan province, which is more than at least 94 million people, has issued its highest level of weather warning following the unusual active rainy season. Many factors contribute to flooding, but a warming atmosphere caused by the climate change makes extreme rainfall more likely. Now, international stories, we do cross over to Africa, where we'll be looking at Nigeria secures release of 100 kidnapped mothers and children, and the authorities in the northwest Nigeria say they have freed 100 women and children, mainly mothers nursing infants who were seized by the bandits. Now, the group were abducted on the 8th of June in Zamfara State. 4 people were also killed during the incident, and Zamfara State government said they were released without any ransom being paid, but gave no further details. Now, the group will now be given medical checks and debriefed before they return to their homes. A spate of kidnapping has taken place in the region during the recent months, and since December 2020, more than 1,000 people have been abducted. Most have later been freed, reportedly after ransoms have been paid, but some also have been killed. Well, clearly that's what is trending on your international scene. Robert and Priscilla did give us what yesterday looked like. More of it was about the Eid celebrations. However, we'll also let you enjoy our song for the day. We expect that this song lifts you up and lightens up your day ahead of all the challenges you're facing. Let's take a break. When we come back, Robert, myself, and Priscilla will be taking you through our newsreel. Good morning.
one of the greatest things that humanity needs is information. And that is what we do here every morning. We kickstart your day with relevant, authentic information that you need to know as you go about business. Yes, we all know that there could be those that have not left home for the last many days. But we make sure that we come to your sitting room, we come wherever you are with information that really enables you to move with activities that are happening when you're a knowledgeable person. Now, when the president came out and gave guidelines that included a partial lockdown for the next 42 days, many Ugandans wondered, how am I going to make it through these 42 days? But I guarantee you, it was first a month plus 2 weeks, then it came to a month, then it came to 20 days, now less than 10 days to go. And God has been graceful to us. However, also government knew, and some well wishers, that this could be a trying time. So we saw the Prime Minister, through our office, coming up with an intervention, and that was money that was going to be sent on mobile phones to the vulnerable people, mostly affected in cities and municipalities. This kicked off. Some have received, others are still waiting, and also the ministry knows better on some of the challenges there. But we also saw well-wishers coming up to give aid. We saw churches, we saw some politicians do this as well. Government came up and said, no, you're going to spread COVID. Inform the office of the RDC, let them help you, give out this. In Kampala, yesterday we saw the minister, that is Hajat Misa Kabanda, saying, no, do not give food, give cash, give money, get these people's numbers and just send money, because whatever you're doing is not working in favor of why we came to a lockdown. So these various forms of relief are what we are going to be discussing. How relevant? Have they helped? Have they served the purpose? We also saw groups coming up and meeting some people as a group, and they come back with some huge amounts of money to divide amongst themselves to see them through this period. Felix, well knowing that we've had a number of approaches to ensure they help people at this time of COVID-19, one of the biggest issues that we want to look at, have they served the purpose? Yesterday, Mufti said that, well, food would have done better than money.
Well, clearly there's been a couple of efforts, and both private and also public, what you want to call government. There's been all efforts, and some of which have yielded. That's why much earlier I was asking, do you know some people who are getting some of this money? At the beginning of this second, what you want to, people call it partial lockdown. I don't know why they call it partial lockdown. Probably they're expecting a full lockdown, I don't know, or such. But of these 42 days, we are actually, for me, I think it is lockdown within lockdown, because also lockdown added, you know. So in this particular one, the dynamics were totally different from the previous states in terms of how the lockdown was operative. The expectation was that because of its abrupt nature, and given the history of the most, or this one being a subset of the bigger lockdown, the effects were still quite evident. So the relevancy of aid is very much meaningful in this particular, what people call the small lockdown. Why? You see, Robert, you can only judge a society by drawing a right reflection of their livelihoods. And their livelihoods are entirely determined by their level of socioeconomic stance. And I can tell you by far that on average, most of the Ugandan, if you look at average Ugandan today, if they told to describe an average Ugandan, I don't know, maybe you or Priscilla can help us. How would you describe an average Ugandan, Robert?
A person at least who can feed his family.
That's an average Ugandan.
Educate.
That's a description.
Have some bit of earning, sustainable earning. I would look at that as an average Ugandan.
But I wouldn't look at it from that angle, Robert. Clearly, between you and me, you know, out of every 10 Ugandans, how many of them can do that? Because that then would give us a purpose spectrum of judgment. You know, out of every 10 Ugandans, how many of them can feed their families, take them to school, look after their health care, and, you know, just to mention, but a few will feed them. So it means that by far, in normal times, many Ugandans are living an abnormal life
in normal times. So they need relief in normal times.
That's the thing. I'm glad you picked it. That even if everything was normal, out of 10 Ugandans, 7 of them, okay, let's say 5% or 5 of 10 Ugandans need relief in normal
times.
Now what happens in abnormal times? It is incumbent on government. Yesterday we talked about the social contract between people and government, for them to develop what we call a national relief plan. A national relief plan, given the background of that we have discussed, that what is the normal livelihood, what is the normal lifestyle of a Ugandan in normal times vis-a-vis abnormal times, it will then give us a better judgment of such an approach. So the question is, there's this whole thing of the Prime Minister's relief of 100,000 that was sent to people on fund. If you're to break down, and we appreciate it for those who got it, I think it is, the Baganda have a saying that yadde yaddeko. So it's that we may complain about it, but it came. So that's a good starting point. However, we should probably have done better, in my opinion. We shouldn't have, because of the background I gave, that the definition of people who are vulnerable in times that are abnormal is not the same of people in times that are normal. So you're going to find that even what a gesture it was for the Prime Minister will not make sense, because it does not address the abnormal times. You get the point. And as much as it's a good gesture, but it does not address the problem generally in abnormal times. Because remember, we talked about 5 out of every 10 are needy in normal times. Now, in abnormal times, all the 10 are what?
Felix, I want to remind you of a statement. I want to mention which minister made it, but he said that if before the lockdown, you've not been working, you've not been having a job, and now that you are in a lockdown, you still expect relief to come your way. You've managed to survive without money even before the lockdown. We are targeting people that have been working and earning daily.
So the ones that have not been working, let them die.
They have been maybe having their ways of surviving.
Let me just say
so now this relief is
briefly in regards to what you said. I don't know of a time, and I stand to be corrected, where you saw people begging money from government when things were normal. And I stand to be corrected. I don't know what kind of aid has government ever given people in normal times. I also stand to be corrected. You can also tell me you've been in this field of media and the news and journalism. I don't know if you've heard of those times where you saw government saying, now we are sending money in normal times.
To bail out people.
What am I trying to say? Ugandans, given whether they are not employed, I don't know what the minister, whoever he is, meant or she meant in that sense, but with normal times of this country, Ugandans have lived and have managed to live. It is in this country where we have women who have paid for school fees for people, for about a family of 12 people alone as single mothers, yet they work on these streets, buying sweets and what and what. We know this. But because it brings back what I said earlier, Robert, because these are abnormal times, you don't, such a statement is a reflection of the idiocy of that person who said it. Yeah.
Well, Priscilla, one of the things here, like Felix said, yes, that even the Nabanja money could to some extent, but of course it may not serve the purpose given in terms of how much it is and this. But now government comes up and calls upon the public that if you have intentions to give, please, first and foremost, we do not want to see what we saw in the first lockdown, these clashes. Inform the office of the RDC. So that this aid, you just get it to this office or they help you give it out, because you don't have the technicalities on how you're going to distribute food. Then as we are still at that okay, now if you're a non-state actor, do this. Then the minister comes up and says, no, if you're to give, because you're in times of COVID-19, give in terms of money, get these numbers, send money to these people. Do you think all these responding to the plight of an ordinary Uganda who is craving for anything to come their way for them to survive?
Okay. First of all, the principle of giving a loan, it's saddening that it's being reduced to a way that people want to control it. If you don't have salt in your house, when you come to my house and ask me for salt, do I then have to first to go and ask the leader in the house to go, Kirabo asabayo kumunyo, tumwe kumunyo, to give you salt? You need salt, I have salt, so let me share what I have with you. And that is where the principle of giving is. We don't need permission to give. We don't need permission to be kind. If it is who you are, then it is who you are, and what you're going to do exactly what you are. So from that angle, it's saddening that people are having to want a control of how people are giving, because if that's going to be the case, then we might as well continuously hear Saba government it way, Saba government it way, because you're trying to control what people's kindness should be to their communities and giving. Away from that, when from those recommendations that have come through from our leaders, I think it is selfish, number one, because when we go through that bureaucracy of inform, then take to the office of the RDC, or do this, or register it, or convert it into money, then it's going to go to a certain pool that is controlled by people, and then it's going to sit there and probably I cannot do anything in real time, because what we have to consider is that this is urgency that we are dealing with.
And I love the word "in real time."
This is urgency. Yes. People are hungry now. When you have food in your store and someone is hungry, does that look a good picture? You're collecting food. You're collecting money that should be getting people aid, and you want to store it. It then negates the fact that this should be relief, and relief is described with urgency. So if urgency is taken out of this element, then I think we're doing what Felix was suggesting. The national, first wait, the national, you called it the what? National Relief Fund? What?
But also, there is an issue of spreading COVID-19. This is what they are looking at, and they are saying, come on,
okay, Kirabo,
if you're going to give...
When we take it to the office of the RDC, you're trying to say the RDC won't get COVID-19?
The RDC, they have that technicality.
Robert, no, answer the question. You mean the RDC will not get COVID-19?
Also the other
Even
question.
if when they take it to the office of the RDC and then it's redistributed, you mean the people who are redistributing it don't have COVID-19?
But Robert,
do you tell me that they're being tested every single day?
Yes,
and guess what? Even the doctors who know best how to treat COVID-19 are dying of COVID-19. So that cannot be an excuse.
We mustn't try to demotivate people who are willing to give. Because clearly government has not done the best of the job in terms of relief. And that's a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to alter the version of that statement. And if the private sector is coming in to give, you can guide them. You can guide them, tell them, and the same SOPs. Because if you send money to Kirabo, where do you get the money? You have to go to mobile. You get the point.
To withdraw.
I don't know when you say talk about the office of the RDC. Are they rabbits, not people? Or are they goats or sheep? They are also people. You know, some of these statements, we say them in abstract, but the truth of the matter, let's not demotivate people to give. Robert, I want to say this without fear of contradiction. If you move in the most known suburbs of Kampala, you may break down in tears. Robert, people are eating, I don't know how they call it, the peelings of bananas as food. In a country that is a seasoned agriculture country.
Because of lack of power to purchase, yes.
And that's what we're trying to say, that during normal times, people would survive. I've never heard of a time where people say, in normal times, I've never, in terms of feeding. They have never. Even the poorest of this country, you see women walking with maize to Kampala from which villages, because they know they have to work. But even if they walk today, whom are they going to sell their maize to? Now, that's why I told you that out of the 10, 5 are already vulnerable normal times. Now, it means in COVID-19, all of them are what?
Yes,
now,
yes.
the National Relief Plan is not what we call inclusive. And this was their argument before, Robert, that it lacks inclusiveness. For you to come and say that we are looking at, for example, you said you're looking at taxi drivers, you're looking at conductors, you're looking at boda boda, you're looking at this very food, what? How many of them? You know? How many of them? So, if you want to talk about relief, Robert, and I want to say this, you see, we have focused on relief and other aspects as government or as a country. We have left out the things that cause more problem. Let me say this, and it's a prediction you can watch. The aftermath of these 42 days and how government and the so-called scientists will handle is going to give what I'm trying to find a lighter word. It's going to be a springboard for some of the things you have never seen in this country. If you live in communities, for all of you and other people who are watching, and you know what is happening in communities, Robert, how government handles the aftermath, the end of this 42 days, whatever decision the scientist or government or ministry comes out with may give you something you might have never seen in this country. I'm telling you, whether good or bad, but watch the space, depending on how government handles. Because you see, people can only be patient when there is hope. In the absence of hope, you cannot determine how far someone can go. And that cuts across. You may get to a place, hey, you know what, man eat man. Those stories we used to do in history. You may see man eat man in this situation.
Because it's left with nothing else.
That's why last time I was telling you, and I want to say this from clear experience, finally, scholarly, that this is a time where you must see psychological leadership. Not military, not political, not psychological leadership. That even if a Kirabo did something wrong, the best approach may not be to imprison Kirabo. Psychological leadership is what we need in this time. Because any small mistake we make may make an outburst for us as a country.
Well, Priscilla, before I get your final remarks, we know there are a couple of people that are participating through YouTube. Let's first have those messages.
As I respond to these messages, just to respond to what Felix called the National Relief Plan. I think under any government and any country, that does exist, and it's what is known in Uganda as the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness, where we do have Minister Hilary Onek. Again, it is, yeah, and the point of this office is to deal with the agencies in terms of natural disasters, in terms of man-made disasters, where COVID-19 does fall in this case, because it just appeared out of the blue. It did not come with a warning, a sticker, or or a gift purchase card, something like that. Yes. So when we think about it in that way, ideally this should actually be falling under that Ministry of Disaster Preparedness. We do have the Office of the Prime Minister then launching what they've called the COVID Relief Fund, where we're seeing the Nabanja money being distributed. We have also seen the National Task Force that was created from day one, and it's been recipient of aid, relief, and funding in all sorts of forms, in cash, in terms of vehicles, ambulances. People have given in every way they can give to the National Task Force to be able to deal with COVID-19. I think the question should be, what is the assessment? What is the evaluation? What is the monitoring process of these bodies that are together, supposed to be working together to create a relief-funded environment for a normal Ugandan or an average Ugandan, as Felix called it? Away from COVID-19, I do believe these plans do actually exist. It doesn't have to be one big national plan. If you look at the Ministry of Health, I mean, it's the one that is in the limelight right now. I'm pretty sure in their plans, in their administration, in their budgeting, they do have where they do consider relief plan in terms of health. They will, you know, have the public entities for health services to the average Ugandan at an affordable cost or even no cost at all, I think that would then be considered relief plan nationally. You would be seeing that in terms of the Ministry of Agriculture, managing the prices and the costs, the buying and selling of agriculture produce within the country and across the borders. That would be considered a relief plan for the agriculturalists, average agriculturalists in this country. So within the different ministries, I believe originally or initially these plans do exist. It's just that COVID-19 has come out to be an independent giant that everyone wants to fight in their own version. But if we can all put that at the back of our mind, that the point of relief is urgency, then this shouldn't be an issue that we should be talking about this morning. But speaking of responses, we do have some responses on our YouTube channel. You can head over to our YouTube channel, which is UBC Television Uganda, and be a part of the discussion. A comment here: the money became useless after going to the wrong category of people. Most of the needy people were left out, and the ones on an average and satisfying condition probably got.
That's what I told you earlier, that these community development officers did us more harm than good. They came up with lists, they don't understand the communities, then the LCs had to just either confirm or what. So at the end of the day, the relief did not go to the targeted people.
Nyevaza Moses says, I'm watching from Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much for the show, guys. Thank you so much, Moses. We do have Joy Desire. In my opinion, I request that next time, let's give food, because actually the fact is food is required in terms of posho, beans. Most people rejected it, giving a chance to the needy ones, welcoming that food. And there's also another message here. Let's not copy USA, because it's a country that actually gave all its people, so let's do according to what we have. Yeah, in the US, every month they would give a certain amount of dollars to everyone. So that is probably where the office of Prime Minister had gotten the idea. You have to, as Joy Desire put it, you have to look at what you have, the resources you have, and the nature of a country that you have to be able to adapt some of these relief aid funds, ideas, etc.
For me, I think the big picture here from this discussion that I can say is, let's learn to do things and perfect them. Because when you look at the Nabanja money, what we've termed as Nabanja money, in my opinion, it could have done better. But the problem we have in our country is always have good ideas, brains sit together, but it's all about implementation and supervision or monitoring, where we go wrong. If we are to look at how the ministry had come up with this plan, looking at the percentage of the communities, the statistics, if these monies went to the right people, the vulnerable people, then in one way or the other, however little it was, it could have meant meaning. But the problem is, again, we've gone to what we do best here. Poor monitoring, then we have people extortion here and there. At the end of the day, things go the wrong way. But we pray and believe that a time shall come when we have a big percentage of Ugandans vaccinated and we can have business as normal, because it has proven that we cannot have relief and sustain Ugandans throughout this. Keep safe, stay safe till the vaccine comes. We believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. Every day new innovations are coming up in the line of treatment. We believe we'll get out of this. But before that, perfect soaps so that you live to tell the times of COVID-19. Let's return with what is trending in the print media.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa. If we get vaccinated now, observe social distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly. Together we can defeat this enemy.
Talk of the Day on UBC, brought to you by Authentically Symbolic and Insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odong Top, was brought to you by...
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
We can't to remind you of COVID-19 and of course remind you that please perfect the soaps, because that is the only thing that you can have now as you wait for vaccination. The greatest thing is staying alive and you know what to do. As aid comes your way, whatever it is, what is important is, are you alive? And how do you do that? The soaps are at our fingertips. It's also our obligation to ensure that we take you through what is happening and what you expect to happen throughout the day. It's now time that we look at some of the stories in the print media. But before that, thank you, Tony Kent Chaze, for watching and keeping it on UBC TV. Honorable Mike Sebaru, also thank you so much. Seen a tweet there on my Twitter page. Thank you so much for being with us on UBC TV. And he says, well, government can do so much. So we just hope that you stay alive and you live to see the next day. Looking at what is in the New Vision this morning, best schools for O-level, that is senior one entry points, likely to be hiked. So they give you the best schools there in the New Vision. Then Muslims mark Eid. Well, there is a picture of Muslims praying. I think this is at a residence of one of them, and they were social distancing because we're under lockdown and they had to observe SOPs as well. Alliance Global officials held, that is Alliance in Motion Global recruiters who have been operating in different parts of the country have been arrested. The security raided on their premises following numbers of complaints from different youth who were allegedly fleeced. Yes, that is externalization of labor. Still in security, Mohozi visits rebel attack scene in Zombo. That is the command of the land forces there. Still, Museveni is set to meet workers' leaders. Okay, on what? Last time we also know where they said, I think it's an NSS thing that we must sort. Then business, 3 billion railway equipment, case takes new twist, and give food, not cash, says the Mufti of Uganda, Sheikh Shaban Ramadan Mubaje.
Daily Monitor, we see Rwanda tapped phones of top Ugandan officials. They give you some of the people whose phones could have been tapped. That is former Chief of Defense Forces, that is General David Muhoozi, Sam Kutesa, Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, and Fred Nyanzi, Noob activist, and many of that. Now, beating COVID without my wife, I would be no more, says Kamboho. And homes, building your dream house on a small income. But also in the papers, Ugandans protest a COVID vaccine giveaway to harm Chiguru, and Muslims mark Idi Aduha with feasting. Inside the papers, from the archives here, are Christians outside Namidembe Cathedral, that is in 1943. But also, today in history, Obote launches fundraising campaign to fight polio, and Aswan High Dam completed.
In the New Vision, still looking at statistics of COVID-19, that is new confirmed cases, 251. Looking at new death, 20. Total number of people who succumbed to COVID in Uganda, that is now 2,412. So please do not be part of these statistics. Still, know your member of parliament. We have Sam Chipto Ris, that is MP Kapchora municipality. And today in history, it was on this very date, that is the 21st of July, but the year 1962, when Archbishop warned the country against religious fights. Still on the same date, that is 21st of July, the year 1989, Angola peace mission resumes. And some of the facts or myths, here we have the expert, Dr. Alfred Ruware, Assistant Commissioner and Program Manager, Uganda National Immunization Expanded Program on Immunization, answering this question: were vaccines developed too quick to be safe? He answers that question, and you get to know more of the information you need to know about COVID-19 and some of the things that are more than myth. Then signs and symptoms: if you have a fever, you have a cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, headache, seek medical advice. This could be symptoms of COVID-19.
Well, of course, now in sports, as Six Stars kept guessing for Friday's flag duties, but also Japanese police fined Ugandan weightlifter who went missing. Now, of course, also Olympics, a full contingent there. Uganda's team to the Olympics is littering with class, from boxing, swimming to rowing and athletics. Now, also Omuriwe appointed volleyball cranes coach, and who will carry Uganda's flag in Tokyo. They give you a full profile of some of the people who are there representing Uganda. But of course, also now Uganda athletic who fled from Japan, that is from the camp, finally found, and his fate won't, well, we will know about his fate depending on how the matter will be handled by his colleagues there in Tokyo.
Well, in the New Vision Sport Olympics update, the New Vision brings you that. Then lost and found, that is Ugandan heavyweight lifter, has been found 4 days after he had disappeared from the Olympics training camp in Japan, leaving a note saying he wanted to find work. Then still Tokyo's 48,000 meals per day. Give you more of that. And still regarding who will be our stars, where do we expect to do better? The New Vision brings you details and expectations of the Olympics and Team Uganda.
Well, of course, also giving you what's in the Daily Nation. Now we're looking at RIP off as schools sneak in extra fees there. Now unauthorized levies are hidden under various terms to avoid detection. Of course, also they give you there a photo of some of those contenders that are making of the third force ahead of the 2022 elections, and much more information about the forthcoming elections for Kenya there, and of course what the expectation should be and what different camps are doing to prepare for those elections. Now, much of that is what you'll be able to get when you get yourself copies of the papers. That is the Daily Monitor, the New Vision, and of course the Daily Nation. Now, I can't wait to be taken around town. I don't know around which town, for what purposes per se. But of course, there are also routes that lead to markets. Markets have been busy most recent this time.
Also, Felix, fairly, I think day by day vehicles are increasing on the road.
I don't know about that.
You see the number of vehicles increasing on the road. Some areas are even finding jam. Although you must accept there are also roads that are under construction.
Jam is basically brought by these enormous roadblocks everywhere unnecessarily, I think, in my opinion. So you do realize that there are places people are stopped and in the middle of the road. It's also quite tedious. But anyway, the traffic lady is here to give us those tips about traffic, and also probably let us know which places we can go to with this lockdown.
In response to Robert and him saying that every other day he seems to see more vehicles on the road, I think that is in reference to the peak hours. In terms of traffic, we do have what we call peak hours, and here in Uganda we could have those in the morning between 6 and 8 a.m. and in the evening all the way starting from 4:30 all the way to 9 p.m. in the evening. But with the lockdown, everyone is expected to be in their house by 7 p.m. Now that means that the traffic is going to pick up exactly around 4:30, and I have seen a stretch of traffic, especially for traffic that is coming in from Jinja Road connecting to Entebbe Road, accessing Entebbe Road through Chibuye, and they have to use the Queensway. The Queensway roadblock is one that will check every single vehicle. And that is what is causing traffic, as Felix did put it, that the different roadblocks, when they choose to actually do their operations, they will have to cause jams. So if you're not patient, or if you don't put that into your time structuring for everything that you have to do as an essential worker, because the only people that have this leeway and this privilege are the essential workers, then that will change your plans and the things that you had to do in the time that you actually had to do it. Now, we may not have as much traffic on the road, but we just want to let you know that for those of you that are still accessing the roads in the different ways, for whatever purpose it is, one, you have to consider that as you are enjoying the freedom of the road, I'm pretty sure many of you have been tempted to actually drive at faster speeds than you usually do. Just a recommendation, while you are enjoying the speed, please consider that you're still driving through a community, you're still driving through a market area, and your drive-through may get you off guard when someone actually out of the blue crosses the road. Out of the blue something happens, and by the time you actually get to apply your brakes, it may be too late and they could be damaged. That is irreversible. Now, with that consideration, please ensure that you go by the speed limits that have been given for every community, for every bump, for every roundabout, for every area. Every area has a speed limit, and it's a signpost that you get to look out for on the side of the road that you are driving on. So please put that into consideration. Also, the other thing that we just want to let you know, yes, we still have a total lockdown. Even border to border is still under lockdown. So make sure that you do have every single permit that accesses you on the road, so that when you actually come to a roadblock, you don't have to, sweat plasma. You see people who are fidgeting even when you have your documentation. So you don't have to fidget. Just make sure that you have your documentation. You make sure you have your national ID, but also make sure that you have an up-to-date driving permit. Now, this one, whether it's lockdown or not lockdown, you must be driving with a valid national ID and a valid driving permit. Also, the other restriction that was given in terms of transport is the restriction to vehicles. Now, each vehicle was told to carry half the capacity that it usually carries. Now, for saloon cars, that capacity was limited to 3 persons, including the driver. So take care of yourself. Be cautious for your own self, that if it's more than 3 people, then you don't have to get into that vehicle regardless. I'm pretty sure for different companies and entities and ministries, there's been made provision for that in terms of fuel and different drivers and more access to vehicles to be able to get you wherever it is that you are going. For bigger cars, again, half the number is the consideration from the directives that were given for this lockdown. Until anything changes, you have to be observant of those things. But those are some of the traffic tips that we can give you this morning here on Good Morning Uganda. However, weather seems to continue speaking, climate continues to be speaking, and the natural disasters are getting louder and louder and louder. Right from last week, when we saw the flooding, heavy floodings in Germany, we started off this week by looking at the heavy fires that are cutting across USA. And now, in the wake of this morning, we are waking up to news that in China, they are also experiencing flooding within the city centers, which is interesting because for countries as developed as China, you would think that their drainage systems are the best. But even with the best drainage systems, they have experienced heavy rains that have caused heavy flooding to the extent that people are losing their lives, property, vehicles are just swimming around, which is a natural disaster. Yes, we do agree, but maybe somewhere, somehow, this natural disaster was created by something else that was done many years ago. Kenyana Molen here to have this conversation with me. Good morning to you, Molen.
Yes, a very good morning to you, Priscilla. It seems like it is a good morning here across Uganda and for most areas, but we are getting devastating reports of more and more disasters happening across the world. And this is worrying because then it causes effects to everyone, even for those traveling. Some of the countries are actually getting more effects, like the US now. It just went from heat wave to wildfires, and now all this smoke that is hanging in the sky, turning skies dark. It is all really devastating information coming in from there. we're just lucky that we've not had most of those extreme weather here in Uganda, but we have also seen the Kasese floods that we've been having, and over the years also the mudslides in Bududa and also the Rwenzori area. So yes, this is posing to be a great challenge all the way across the world.
Okay, I would like to ask Molen, what's the relationship between heavy rains and industrialization, especially in a country like China, where we know without a doubt that industrialization is everywhere?
Yes, because like for China, they are having larger part of the economy in industrialization, and what that has done is they have continued to pollute the environment. And I think at some point there is when in the past 5 years, I think, when we saw China even advising people to put on masks, not because of the pandemic, but because there's a lot of pollution. And there was a lot of dust in within the air, and that was just across China. We did see that happening as well. So this pollution, and you know, with weather, it doesn't cut across just over China. Even when pollution is over there, it will still be going into the general atmosphere, and henceforth it will cause a global rise in temperatures. And also looking at the fact that most of the industries do use non-renewable energy, it does contribute to more greenhouse gases within the atmosphere. Now, their contribution to the greenhouse gases has been tremendous over the years, looking at what they're contributing and also comparing that to other countries that come close, like Japan and USA, but now they are starting to see some of those extreme events happening. Yes.
Okay. All right, Molen. The other thing that comes to my mind in terms of these natural disasters, such as the one that we are trying to assess here in China, is population and population settlement. When we look at a country like China, vast as it is, it has a population to the tune of 1.3 billion as of the statistics of 2019, which is a huge number. Like, I don't know how many times you have to multiply Uganda to get 1.3 billion. Now, that is a challenge. Is there a relationship between population increase and how nature then gets to respond to that?
There is at least studies that show that the more activities, obviously, that are done within the country, that can be compared to the population, but not scientifically any proof that because of the population, then we look at more contribution to greenhouse gas effect or even climate change. But maybe I can tell you this: we do have what we call urban heating, and most of China is actually urban. There is industrialization everywhere. Now, if you look at most of the cities, like Hong Kong, where there is a lot of industrialization, still that effect of urban heating, because of all the activities that go on around the centers, that does contribute to more warming in the atmosphere. So that can only be in terms of temperature increase within the city centers due to more activities that are being done there, but doesn't necessarily mean that countries with less population won't even pollute, as long as what they're doing in terms of industrial activities and other activities that do lead to emission of greenhouse gases, it will still lead to more pollution and henceforth the temperature increase within the atmosphere. Yes.
All right, as Molen is giving us more of these conversations here on Good Morning Uganda, we're going all the way to 9 a.m. At exactly 8 a.m., we're going to be having Robert Kirabo and our guest for the day talking about the COVID Relief Fund. Has been a success, or is it a mock in the first place? But that's a conversation that they will have, and whatever comes out of it from your assessment, you will then pick your side where you fall. In the world of sports, we do have a countdown, 2 days to the Tokyo Olympics 2020, and Seth Toleko has been found. What is the next step in the direction of the world of sports? Ruben Pima Chibirango will be here to give you the updates. But relating sports to nature, we did have the British Grand Prix over the weekend, and four-time world champion in Formula One Sebastian Vettel did the most amazing thing. After the Grand Prix, when the crowd had dispersed, he helped the organizers to actually pick up litter and and get the environment looking cleaner as it was initially found. I believe that was a good gesture, which I then put out to you. What are you doing in your community, in your environment, in your house, in your home, to actually ensure that the environment around you is kept clean and it's conducive for every other user? You can start by picking up the litter around you. You can start by ensuring that you put the right things, the right kind of rubbish in the right places, so that we can all live harmoniously. Now, speaking of harmoniously, well, Molen has more of how you can harmonize nature, weather and climate. Good morning.
Yes, thank you very much, Priscilla, and good morning to all our viewers. Talking about the gesture that Sebastian did, I found that really interesting, him going all the way to pick litter and make sure the environment is clean. Now, this is still a challenge to all of us, especially if you know you have influence in your community. This is a time to show an example and do something that you know your followers or your friends or your fans will actually get and pick a leaf and also do a similar thing as we talk about nature and environment. Talking of which, every day, each and every day, we are talking about extreme weather events. And this time, we are looking at China having a very heavy floods. And in the last 24 hours, we have reports that are indicating that they have gotten rainfall up to totals of 662 millimeters in just 24 hours. Now, that is like 90% of their annual rainfall. We do have some of the videos that are coming through from central China indicating the flood that was there last night. And some of these images, actually, if you look through, have been quite disturbing, looking at people's cars being taken away and some of the people that drowned within the flood and people who are trying to cross the road. It is really a devastating effect across central China. Now, that also comes ahead of a typhoon that is forecasted. Now, typhoon is called tropical cyclone here for areas of Africa. Now, this is also forecasted to hit China and Taiwan and also parts of Japan. We are looking at extreme weather all through, likely to be hitting this area, and Asia has been most hit by these extreme events over the years. Now, we can only say that this is getting more and more worse by the day as we look at more areas experiencing most of these extreme events. Now, in terms of rainfall, when we look at just one area, central China, receiving 90% of what they have been having for the last, like in terms of their annual totals, then we can think of what could be causing this, what could be causing all these rains. Yes, there is a recurrency in terms of these typhoons hitting areas like this, but also there is increase in the temperatures when it comes to looking at a global scale, and this is what is triggering all these events across the world. Now, that's not only China. We do have, for the very first time, UK yesterday did issue out a warning for extreme heat across the UK, across Glasgow, and for most areas that are looking at numbers that are going below, that are going above what is normal. Now, to them, 22, most of the cities go up to normal average temperatures of 22 and 24 degrees centigrade, but we are seeing that UK, for the very first time, they are issuing an alert for extreme heat. Now, this is also consistent with what we're seeing across the world. Just last week, we did have those reports coming through about the wildfires that we did see in California and also across Canada, which is also bringing in a great threat. We did see the smoke clouds that are now covering skies, and also these wildfires in California are generating weather of their own. You find that these have in turn influenced the weather that is being experienced over those areas. Now, some of the families have started to return back to their homes to check in whether their houses are still standing. Now, that was after they were evacuated last week as the wildfire were being forecasted to actually move across and take on more and more millions of hectares across the region. Now, we also saw landslides in the last 24 hours across Turkey. We did see some of the homes that were destroyed. Now, lucky enough, people had evacuated homes before these landslides took place. We do have one of the videos showing the home that was displaced by these landslides. Now, it is only fortunate that we saw the people in this particular house had already been evacuated and they were not harmed. Now, this also poses a challenge because we do see countries like Turkey, they have not had a lot of extreme weather, but now in just this decade, as we start this decade, that has been looked at as one of those that will be bringing in more effects in terms of extreme weather. Now Turkey also experiencing most of these landslides and also extreme weather. This can only get worse, I can tell you, which is why scientists are already relating this to climate change, and the evidence is now clear because all across the world we're seeing extreme weather happening every day, from floods to fires to heat waves to landslides, and this is just getting worse and worse. And also here in Uganda, we did see those floods across Kasese. It's not even a major rainy season. We are only having these torrential rains and also causing more effects. We are seeing drought. We've seen drought situations in Madagascar that has been ongoing for the last 6 months, which is also posing as a great challenge in terms of food security. People in Madagascar are out of food and are calling for help. This is all due to what is happening with our climate changes. It is evident that our climate has changed. There are variations in what we're seeing over and over the day. Now, this is when we also call for to move from just a climate crisis to an emergency. And I can't get tired of saying this because what we are seeing is not supposed to be happening. We are not supposed to be losing property, losing lives to nature. In fact that we have been the ones creating most of these effects. 90% of what is happening with our climate changes are actually due to human activities. So if we can tone down, look at more sustainable ways, move to renewable energy, then we can look at a better environment. Well, let's come back home and take a look at what is happening over our skies in terms of our satellite. We did start off the day with mostly cloudy conditions across the country. Most areas were having cloudy conditions. We did have that rain system starting off across the Lake Victoria Basin, mostly to the western part of Lake Victoria, but that is only just spreading towards the central part of Lake Victoria Basin, towards areas of Kampala, and this will also be moving forward towards areas of central, but will die off later as the day goes on. We do have mostly where you see the white clouds, those are only cloudy conditions coming through across most areas throughout the country. We do have quite clear skies across the eastern part of Lake Victoria Basin. That is where we have Tororo. We are already seeing that sun come through across that area. Now we do have more clouds actually developing across midwestern Uganda, and that is what will be bringing us rains even later in the afternoon. We do expect more systems to develop around this area. Now this time of the year, we do see part of the rain belt that is mostly confined usually to the western side of the country. Now this moves westwards and mostly affecting Congo, but also western Uganda does benefit from that system. But also for the Lake Victoria Basin, the rains that we usually see across Kampala, rains that we see across Masaka, especially this western side of Lake Victoria Basin, are normally due to the local effects. That is the influence of Lake Victoria. Now for northern Uganda, we do have Gulu and Karamoja already building up with clouds, but that will also be fading away with intervals of sunny conditions, only that we will have rains coming through later in the afternoon. We will go ahead and take a look at our forecast for this morning, but most areas are already seeing intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions with the sun coming through. Starting off with central Lake Victoria Basin, that is where we have Kampala, we have Mukono, we have Entebbe Wakiso. We are forecasting isolated showers, and those are starting off at 25 degrees centigrade, but only over a few places. Now also for parts of that is eastern parts of Lake Victoria Basin, where we have Jinja, we have Tororo, we have Busia, we are forecasting intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions at a pleasant 26 degrees centigrade, and that will be across the entire region. We'll be seeing more sun coming through for this area. Quite a pleasant morning over there. Now for central north, that is where we have Gulu, Kitgum, we have Padel, Jumani. We are forecasting also a mix of clouds and sunshine. starting to warm up swiftly at 27 degrees centigrade, and later in the day we shall see temperatures going up to 30s across that area, that is central northern Uganda. Looking at the eastern part of central, that is where we have Ruwero, we have Wobulenzi, we have Rudi, we have Nakaseke, Nakasongola in that category. We are also forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine. Temperatures likely to go up to 26 degrees centigrade. Now, eastern Uganda, that is where we have Soroti, Katakwi, we have Kumi in that category. We are forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, and also starting to warm up at 27 degrees centigrade forecasted for this morning. We do expect those temperatures to go a little bit up as the day progresses. Now, across Mount Elgon Highlands, where we have Mbale, we have Bududa, Buko in that category. We are forecasting intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Mostly sunny conditions will be going through this morning across that area, and temperatures are at a chilly 25 degrees centigrade. Now, also mixing with the effects of that Mount Elgon, this area still remains cool even as we head towards the afternoon. Now, Western Uganda, where we have Mbarara, Ibanda, Bushenyi and Rubirizi, we are forecasting also a mix of clouds and sunshine, warming up to 26 degrees centigrade this morning. And looking at the western part of Lake Victoria Basin, where we have Masaka, we do have Kalisizo, Sembabule, we are forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, all the way up to 26 degrees centigrade. Quite some pleasant weather starting off for this area across the western side of Lake Victoria Basin. More and more areas are starting to develop with those cloudy conditions, but most of the morning will be clear across the country. It is a perfect time to get out of the door and head to wherever you are going. We do have Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up, where Robert will be taking you through as we look at the COVID Relief Fund, and also for sports, wait for Ruben, who will be taking you through more in that world. And later, we'll be having Good Morning Uganda Extra with Jagenda Semakula. My name is Molen Kenyana. I want to wish you a good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odong Top.
Was brought to you by
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
In chess, the small one can become the big one. It's the same here. And here too. Watch every move. Record every number so you can plan better. No matter the size of your dream, tomorrow's success belongs to those who keep today's records clean.